house needs painting, the grass needs mowing, where's he at?
Hi, this is Hank. Sorry I missed your call. Leave me your name and your number and I'll get back to you.
He's gone fishing.
Welcome to Off the Water with Hank Parker. So I've got Trey McKinney. It's going to be a great podcast today. This young man is a future Hall of Famer and a bass pro that is making a lot of noise very early in his career. So I'm excited to talk with Trey. So welcome everybody. Trey McKinney. Hello, Trey.
What's going on, buddy?
I don't know it. Now, you just got back from Canada yesterday. Tell me what you were doing.
Absolutely. Up there. So what we were doing up there is freelancing for waterfowl. Awesome trip. I mean, we killed a bunch of birds, had a good time. Up there, it's just a little different. They actually act like a waterfowl up there. You know, they fly out at, go out and feed till 9 a.m., then they go back to water and then fly back out and start feeding in the evening, which at home anymore, there's so much pressure that it's kind of they either fly before shooting hours or after shooting hours. So it was pretty cool to see them in their like kind of natural habitat, not a lot of people. It's almost like a desert out there. I mean, there was nothing happening, no people, no restaurants. And it was pretty cool just to go out there in the wild and just have a good group of guys and go out there and have fun. It was what we all love, so it was a good passion to share.
Well, I was going to be real jealous because my intent was to go spend the second week of October on Lake Champlain fishing topwater for smallmouth. So I thought maybe that's what you were doing. So I was going to be real jealous. But waterfowl, I've outgrown that.
Yeah.
I used to do that all the time, And I hadn't been in probably 25 years on a real waterfowl hunt. And I went to North Dakota last year, and we were putting out silhouettes about 3:30 one morning on public ground. So we had to get there early. And I was putting out these silhouettes. The wind was blowing about 25 miles an hour, and it was freezing cold. And it dawned on me, this is why I don't do this anymore.
Yeah, it is. It was a lot. I mean, we were so far north that I was asking the people around there, like all these lakes that they had and all that stuff. I was like, so is there bass in here? They're like, bass. I'm like, yeah, like smallmouth, largemouth. They're like, no, we got pike. I'm like, oh my, this ain't for me. We were so far north that I guess they either don't stock them or they don't live up there or what. Because every good lake I drive by, I'm like, oh, that right there has got to have them,
Hey,
And
tell you,
they were like, oh.
They're probably there and they don't even know it because they don't fish for them.
That's true. If they're there, I guarantee you that it would be a blast.
The very first BASS tournament they had on the St. Lawrence Seaway, Ray Scott had all these guides come down and tell us about the fishing on Lake Ontario and the river. And so I don't remember if it was Billy Westmoreland or Roland or which one of the anglers said, how about largemouth? And they said, oh, no, there are no largemouth. It's all smallmouth. There are no largemouth.
Yep.
So when I went out and practiced, this one little bay looked so powerful. I mean, grass everywhere. I tied on a buzz bait, and about the third cast, I caught a 6-pound largemouth. I thought, oh my goodness, there's one largemouth in this whole river, and I just caught him. And then about 10 minutes later, I caught another one about 4.5. And I thought, I have found the only place that there is largemouth. I found the only bay. And so as it worked out, it was the first day of that tournament, there were about 140 guys brought in limits of largemouth.
Yeah.
So it blew the guide's mind. Nobody could believe there was so many largemouth. But the Canadian fishermen up there had never fished for them, so they didn't even know they existed.
Absolutely.
So that's probably what's going on up there where you were.
Probably. All they cared about was walleye and the northern. They were showing me pictures. I'm like, so you fish? She's like, oh, yeah, I fish all the time. I'm like, okay, what do you catch? She's like, oh, look at this big one. And it was like longer than his leg. I'm like, that's a little different than what I go after. He's like, really? I'm like, yeah, it's a little different.
It'd be pretty cool to go up there and just try to catch smallmouth and see what you could find.
It would be.
They're there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they're
100%.
there. All right, let's talk about your career. This is going to be a cool podcast because I'm going to hear what you're doing and how you're trying to establish and build a brand, how you're trying to get sponsors, and how you're trying to go forward. And then I'll go back and kind of tell how it was in my era and what we did, and see how different things are today versus 1976 and 1977. What year were you born?
2005.
That is so. I had been retired. I had been retired for about 15 years when you came on the scene. So that's pretty cool. But we'll talk about the way things are, the way things were, and see what the similarities are and see what the differences are. So let's get started now. What are you fishing? Tell me what you fishing, the Elite Series. What are you fishing?
Yes, sir. So I have all my focus in the Bassmaster Elite Series right now. Before, I fished some BFLs, stuff like that, but that's how I started. I started in a lot of that. We can talk about that too. But right now, all my focus is in the Bassmaster Elite Series. Maybe if I did feel like I could do good in a few other tournaments just to maybe, win some money, some extra gas money, something, I might go jump in something. But how I take it is I have 9 tournaments that I got to focus on. No focus is anywhere else. If I go fishing, it's to benefit me for one of those tournaments or somewhere I'm going. That right now, for me to do, all my focus for me to do good, I feel like has to be in those 9 tournaments. And that's what I've done last year. Was every time I went on the water, it was either for one of those events or to learn something that I knew I could probably catch them on in one of those events.
All right. So right now you're 19 or you're 20?
I'm 19 right now.
19 years old. All
yes.
Right. How old were you when you fished your first national tournament?
When I first fished, I fished the Toyota Series when I was 16. When I was 16, I fished one. So I started. It was right at the end of 16 and 17 is when I fished my first Toyota Series. So how it started is around home we had BFLs. And the first year I hopped in them, it's kind of intimidating. You have all your local guys, all your local heroes, the ones that you hear stories about and everything else, and the people I looked up to, to learn from anything about that. And Rick was like, hey, I got a boat now. And I was like, what if we hop in something I'm fishing by myself, because we had fished team tournaments and all that, USA Bassins, Angler's Choice, and done all right, but it's still not the same as making the decisions by yourself. So Rick had the idea. He's like, hey, why don't you just jump in 1 year of the BFL, see how you do? And it was either that or fish high school. So I was like, well, high school, I don't get to make any money. So I was like, maybe if I do good, maybe if I could make a little money, back then any kind of money I made was awesome. I'd go buy something, a shirt or a duck call, something I wanted. And first when I jumped in, I ended up placing, I think, 5th. And I was like, oh, my goodness, I got my first check. Everything's like that. It felt so good. It felt so rewarding. And going through that year, we ended up winning Angler of the Year when I was 16. And that gave me the confidence, like, okay, this is awesome. This is unbelievable. Maybe it was just, a good year. I always heard like everybody talking is how you have, so much ups and downs. I was like, oh, probably next year I'll probably just suck or something. So we went again, and next year we ended up winning Angler of the Year again when I was 17 in the BFLs. And that's when stuff started coming together. It was like, where can I take this to the next level? When I was 17, it was 18, I qualified for the All-American. And that was a really, really cool deal. When I was 17, I made it to the regionals. And when I done that, I ended up placing 2nd at La Crosse in the BFL regionals, which qualified me for the All-American. And that was like the first, big time tournament I have ever fished. And it kind of blew my mind. I didn't do very good. At all. But it was still like experience of it. And right then I realized, like, everybody was saying, go Bass Opens. I'm like, dude, that's a little different than traveling across Illinois than traveling from Florida to New York, So it was a big step. And when we took that step, I was a little scared at first because my first day at Open, I think I had like, a good bag, like 14, 15 pounds, which is for home. Like, most of the time that wins a lot of stuff around here. So I felt really good. I was like, man, I caught him today. And I weighed in, and I think I was like 50th place. I was like, oh, my gosh, like I don't know if this is for me. Like I tried my hardest, and I didn't do that good. And I was like, man, tomorrow I'm going to go out and really, I'm going to try everything I got. And I ended up catching, I think, almost 20 pounds, 19 pounds, 15 ounces. And I jumped all the way up to I think it was in the 20s or I think in the teens. And right then I realized oh my goodness, maybe we do have a chance, maybe we can do this. And we just kept going on and fishing tournaments, and I kept making checks. We did have one or two bad tournaments last year, or not last year, but in the opens. And, it realized how much work I'm going to have to put in to learn these new waters. Cause, I have that learning difference. I haven't had a lot of time on a lot of these places, which I think could help me. A lot of times I'm not fishing history or stuff like that. I go out every day with an open mind because I don't know much about it. So when I go out there, I'm learning what the fish are doing then, because I don't know what they used to do, what they supposed to be doing. I just know I got to find them. And I feel like that helps me a lot right now. And that's what last year we done in the opens, was just kind of going, and every time it was a new adventure. It was a new time to find it and what the fish were doing in that week. And it was really good. And we ended up qualifying for the Elite Series. And this year, every second of my time on the water was to benefit for the 9 tournaments. And I felt like, some people, they do better by working harder. Some people have more of a natural talent, everything else like that. But I blame a lot of the success is from trying to outwork people, trying to go places, trying to spend every time on my water and figuring out what these bass are doing and all these little tricks and all these little techniques that I can learn by just being on the water. And that's what has really helped me, is when I focus on something, that's all I worry about. And that's all I'm trying to learn, is how to catch them on those bodies of water and anything I can use in the future, which has really helped me this last 2 years.
That is so awesome. I will tell you, it's phenomenal that you won Angler of the Year your first year out. Then you go back when you're 17 years old, and you go back when you're 18 years old and win Angler of the Year again. How incredible that is. And then to qualify and to be able to participate and compete on the Elite Series, that is an awesome accomplishment. And you're still 19 years old. I mean, that is mind-boggling. So now that you've got all that going, I heard you say from the very start you're motivated by winning a little money where you can buy you a duck call or whatever it is you're looking for. You can buy a lot of duck calls with what you've done so far, so that's a good thing. But
yes, sir.
I know at one point in time you've got to have, it has had to dawn on you, okay, this is an expensive sport. We're talking $45,000 or so in entry fees. Hotels have gone out of sight. When I fish, now you're not going to believe this. You will not believe this. But when I fished the first year that I went on a touring circuit, I fished what was called the National Bass Association. And there was a hotel chain called Scottish Inns. It was $6 a night. $6 a night. And gasoline was about 70 cents a gallon, 65 cents a gallon. And so I would stay, the first day I'd get to the tournament, I would stay in my car. And then after that, I needed a place to take a shower and all that stuff. So I would get in the Scottish Inn if they had one. If they didn't, Days Inn used to be called 8 Days Inn, and it was $8 a night. So I'd have to step it up another $2 and go to Days Inn. But that's where I would stay if it was at all possible. Sometimes I'd get roped in and they didn't have them. But for the most part, my hotel bill would be $30 for the week. And my gasoline bill would be another $30. So I was very money conscious, trying to stay afloat. And the way I got started, I borrowed $10,000 on a 90-day note from the Northwestern Bank in Maiden, North Carolina, and I started fishing. So I had to make those note payments at the end of every month. So I was highly motivated to have some money left over and nothing motivates like poverty. I mean, that when you got to make a note payment, man, you got to make a check at every tournament. So I was really consistent at making the money. But it dawned on me one day, I got to have some sponsors, man. I can't stay under this pressure that I've got to make enough money that I pay all my bills and have enough money to pay down on my bank note. So immediately I recognized the need for sponsorship. And being a young angler, until you get yourself, and I want to explain this to all these high school fishermen. These guys are great, and I appreciate what they're doing. But here's how sponsorship works, and you know this as well as I do, but we'll explain it for those that may be listening that have a high school kid or maybe is a high school kid that's worrying about how I go about getting sponsors. The way you get a sponsor is when you've got enough notoriety, enough credibility, and enough influence on the public to influence them on making a buying decision based on your recommendation. And so if Lose, for example, if Lose is going to pay me to promote their rods and reels, then I have to have enough influence on the market to influence them to buy a Lose rod and reel, which is not hard to do because they're incredible. But nevertheless, I have to be in that position to get a return for Lose. And if they don't sell enough product to justify what they're paying me to endorse their product, then I'm a liability. If they sell way more product than what I'm charging them for my sponsorship, then I'm an asset to them. So I always like to be an asset, but I always like to make some money. So I tried to establish myself as a value to these companies, whether it be Berkeley or Ranger or Mercury or whomever I'm working with. I tried to establish myself to be a little bit underpaid because that's job security, because I want to renew for next year because I want this to be my life. And so I strategically set out to get sponsors, and I wanted sponsors that I believed in their product because that made it really easy for me. So I only went after the guys that I used their baits and used their line and used their rods and used their reels and their outboards and their boats. And so fortunate for me, I was just so blessed. I signed everybody that I worked for and would have worked for nothing. Yep. And it worked out. You know, it gave me an opportunity. Now I'm into this thing over 50 years, and I still have the majority of those companies that I work for. And that is just an awesome place to be. But
absolutely,
there's a strategy. Now, in my era, I want to hear your strategies before I go into what I did and how I went about it. So you've got to be sitting here and thinking, one, not to flatter you, but you're a really good looking kid. Number two, everybody that I've talked to said, man, that kid is a hard worker. He is so serious about this sport. Your accomplishments are incredible to be where you are right now, as young as you are. Now, did you battle this past year for Angler of the Year? Were you in that top 5 or so running for Angler of the Year?
Absolutely. So I had a few hiccups. So basically this year, I was leading Angler of the Year for a long time. And at Smith, we had the tournament, and I was basically, so what happened was I was so, like you said, I was so caught up in that stress that I had to catch them. You know, like that's the part I never want to get in again. Is like, you know, you do good, and so you talk to people and they expect you to do good. So when you're not doing good, I always had that voice in my back of my head that it was like, well, people expect this from me. People expect this, you know, people expect me to catch them. And, you know, that's always the dark voice in your head that it messes with me. You know, if you're having a bad day, everything else like this is like, well, people expect it. I got to catch them. Like, no matter what happens, I don't care if I, you know, break my leg, I got to catch them. Like, I don't care if I sink my boat. I got to get back with fish somehow. And it was really tough that morning at Smith. And the day before, I weighed in at 3. And I kept going on, and I knew my flight was at 2 and whatever, and I hadn't caught them, and then all of a sudden I started to catch them. I caught a 4-pounder, I caught a 3-pounder, and I ended up working my way up to the biggest bag of the day. And as it was going through, I actually ran back to the ramp to make sure I wasn't late, and I was fishing right by the ramp. And I ended up getting so caught up in trying to upgrade, because basically, so Justin Hamner was right behind me. And the first day, he was in the top 10. and I wasn't. So everybody knows that's exactly what, he was gaining points on me. And I knew I couldn't let that happen. So I was so caught up in trying to catch those fish. It totally kind of like went out of my mind of reality. All I cared about was trying to get that next bite to coal up. And therefore, I lost the whole sight of my flight. I thought, and then the last thing in my mind was like, I come in at 3 the day before. That's my time. Somehow I got it messed up. Don't know how. And I end up coming in late, and all my weight was gone. And I ended up having when I weighed, I had the biggest bag of the tournament. Not the biggest bag of the tournament, but the biggest bag that day. And didn't count. I didn't. I completely washed it away with being late. And that did cost me Angler of the Year. So I ended up second in Angler of the Year, right behind Chris Johnson. And, even if I would have just had like 9 pounds or something like that, or 10 pounds, I would have ended up winning Angler of the Year that day, or to make up those points, which hurts. That's a big stab. Even talking about money, it's $100,000 that, I controlled the uncontrollable and didn't control the controllable. And, it hurts to say that I was that close. I was that close.
Let me stop you right there. That may be the best thing that has ever happened to your career. That may mean, you heat steel and you beat steel and you temper it.
Yeah.
And when you go through what you went through, now I know that night you was probably ready to cut your wrist.
Yep.
You couldn't sleep. You were so mad at yourself. You could have stabbed yourself. You were so angry. But that will teach you a lesson that you will never ever forget. That will temper you and make you a lot stronger and more determined than you've ever been. So adversity and negativity can help build character. And to lose Angler of the Year because you made a mistake is hard on you, but at the same time, it will grow you inside. It will make you more determined. I've been there. I've done those foolish things. I've had that happen. I lost a tournament once at Lake of the Ozarks. My fault. I misjudged my time and I cut it too close and I was 6 minutes late and I lost enough fish that kept me from winning the tournament. It was a risk I did not need to take. I shouldn't have taken it and I lost. And I beat myself up for the whole drive back home, which was about 17 hours. But when I finally came to the realization, I'm a human being, I make mistakes, you got to get past that. And it really helped me for the future. And I believe this will help you. To finish second in Angler of the Year is quite an honor. But to know in your heart that you caught enough fish to win it, that's pretty special. And now next time, you just got to close the deal. But I like the way you're thinking. I like the fact that you say, I haven't been to these lakes. I don't know the history. I don't know what they bit yesterday. All I got to figure out is what they're going to bite tomorrow because I got to go out there and fish. I like that attitude, and I like that frame of mind. And I think sometimes the more time you spend on a body of water, the more you rely on what happened in the past. And there is no future in the past. It's gone.
Yep.
You got to worry about tomorrow. And I like you, and I hope you stay in that position mentally. I hope you get and you stay there because the success you've had is phenomenal. It's unbelievable that you're where you are today and how talented you are and where you're going to go. So now let's talk about strategies, not for winning tournaments, but building a career. How are you going and what's your mindset? What are you thinking? And how do you go about it these days? How do you get a boat sponsor? How do you get a outboard sponsor? How do you get a rod and reel sponsor, a lure? How do you get these people that you can benefit because of what you're doing on the water? How do you get them aligned? And what's your way of thinking about approaching them and getting a sponsor?
Absolutely. So everybody says, your first impression is your only impression a lot of times. Like a lot of times it comes to that. And that's like one thing I've always been worried about is, having that the reliability or the trust from, fans, the industry, anything else like that. And that's loyalty. Like, that's the biggest thing. Like, I was, scared this year. We did make some changes, and you'll find out soon enough. But it will, that's the scary thing is when, if you do, let's say you switch sponsors, anything, it's like, is people going to question your loyalty or something like that? I never want to be that guy that, every different time of year, every next year, I have different names all over, I'm supporting, I'm saying, hey, this is the best now. Like last year this was, but now this is the best. Like, you need to buy this, so I don't want ever, like, that's my main thing is I want people to trust in what I have to say. And me actually, like you said, believing in the product that you support, is huge. And I feel like right now it's so much into the social media. It's so much into that side of things. If you have a good image, if you have, a trustworthy fan base, anything else like that, you're going to be such more value to any kind of sponsor. If you get on there, social media, there's a lot going on right now on social media. There's a lot of keyboard warriors. There's a lot of everything. Like, if you do something right, you can't make everyone happy. I got really caught up in that at the first of this year, making a post, and you see all the comments, and it's like, they don't even know me. Like, how can they say that? It is hard. Social media is hard. No matter what you post, you're going to have some negativity sometimes. But, if you look past that and you feel like I've been blessed, and I feel like in my heart, if I'm doing what I think's right and what's right with me and the Lord, I feel like, that's what matters. That's the thing to me. If I feel like if I'm on the right road and doing the right things for the Lord and anything and providing like that, I feel like, that's a success. Some people's not going to see it like that. And, that's fine depending on what it is. But, this time of year, what I'm trying to do with my sponsors is, when I come to them is more or less, what can I do for you? And then we'll go for that, like on a price wise. Okay. Some people come in and like, okay, so what are you going to give me for me to represent your company? And I feel like that kind of puts like a sour deal into the conversation. It's kind of needs to start with, hey, what can I do for you? What do you feel like my value? What can I benefit for your company? And then we can grow as a relationship basis, and I don't ever want to feel like in a company as a number. That's a really big thing for me is I want to have a relationship with who I'm working with, call them, if I have a question, like most of my sponsors now, St. Croix, any of those people I feel like I can just call and talk to them. If I have a question about the industry, because I don't know a whole lot about the industry, but I'm trying to learn, and that's the main thing. As long as I keep trying and keep trying to figure out everything is great. But I have so many good people as my sponsors right now is I can call and just listen to what they have to say. They've been in the industry for, 20 plus years, something like that. They have a lot of knowledge. And that's what I've been trying to learn is every time I get stumped, I don't know what to do. I don't know what the right decision is I call, the people I trust in their word, and I listen to them. And, I'll take little bits and pieces from each conversation I have and try to build the best puzzle in my mind that I can and the best decision as I can. So a lot of it right now in sponsorship is, trying to grow that following. And it's hard. It really is. Like to be like you said, an asset or something helping a company and benefit a company is trying to grow your following, trying to, get out there, never give up type of thing, and I've never met a stranger in my life. I like talking to everybody, anybody I feel like, I'm like, hey, that dude over there looks like he fishes. Let's go talk to him, just like stuff like that. You just go out there and create your brand as a whole. Like for me on my, even my jersey colors, anything else like that, I don't really ever want to change most of those. I always want to know when you see my colors, it's me type of thing. Like, that's kind of always the deal. I've always wanted to just kind of start building my brand now and just keep trying to grow it slowly. Maybe it's not the quickest thing ever to happen. And it is going to take some ups and downs and, making wrong decisions. But I feel like if you're trying to grow your following and the company see that it is kind of a relationship basis, because I've been with St. Croix for however long, we started, just a few rods. And I like the rods, and I bought quite a few of the rods, and we're like, hey, let's just try it out. I got to know them. They send me a few rods here and there, and I started using them, and now we've just grown that relationship, and that's huge. Even if sometimes, you're probably bugging them, but If not, just calling and chatting with them, checking in with them every time you have a chance or anything else like that. Just go and introduce yourself, say hi. And then it comes to a lot of it is, it's hard to fish for a living anymore. Like like you said, 45 grand in entry fees. If you go out with nothing and you try to win that money, it's a lot of stress. It's so much stress. Like you said, like every tournament you're going to go, I got to make a check. Well, if you're not in the position to make risks to win sometimes, that's going to affect how you fish or what your weight is. So that's how I look at it. Is my first goal is to be, comfortable. So when sponsors, I'm thinking is like, okay, if I can get my entry fees paid for, and instead of going out there and feeling like you want to make a check in every tournament, don't get me wrong, but every once in a while you have a few of those risks that is necessary. Like you might have to take this risk to put yourself in winning that tournament. But if it doesn't work out, that's the thing you got to play with. But if you have your entry fees paid for, maybe for me, I feel like for how I fish is every once in a while I can take the risk that is risky, but if it works out, it puts you up in that 5% of people. It puts you up in that top 10 of the tournament. It gives you that chance. So, and then you always have that voice in the back of your head where I got to make a check. So if I risk that, I might not make a check. And every once in a while, it doesn't work out. But every once in a while when it does, and some tournaments just fall in place. You don't even have to do anything. You don't got to risk anything. It just falls into place and it's your time. But a lot of times this year, like I was able to make a few of those risks. Maybe I had 20 minutes of fishing. I felt like I needed one more bite to make it into the top 10. And it was, 7-8 minutes running up there. I only got 5 minutes to fish. Is it worth it? Is it not? At the gut of you is like, man, that's too risky. What if the waves get up? Anything else like that. But a few times this year, I did make that risk and I did catch a 5-pounder or something like that. Even at St. Lawrence, I done that. I ran back all the way pretty well towards the ramp, and I got a gut feeling. I'm like, I have this one boulder that I saw one fish on, but I know it was a big one. I never got him to bite. But today, the conditions have changed. It's cloudy. I know it's going to be a 3 or 4 cast deal. I'm going to do it. So I ran back to where I was fishing across, and I ended up catching a 5-pounder. And then after that, loaded a boat, ran all the way back to weigh in. So it is like, I feel like for me on sponsorship wise is to get that comfort in that fishing wise. And now we have college, we have, high school, we have so many ways that you can build up. But a lot of times in that sponsorship, and now we're even talking like non-academic sponsorships and stuff, and they were tougher to get. But that is kind of, the fishing industry is so different. I feel like, I guess I don't know a whole lot about it, but like as far as like NFL or, something like that, like in the big football league or anything else like that, it's a little easier to get a non-academic sponsor. But I'm talking even locally for a lot of people. So like if you know some people locally, maybe ask them to get you on your feet. Maybe just kind of as friends, just see what you can do, see if you can help them. Maybe work a few of their. Maybe they have like a show or an in-house show or something once a year or something that you can go help them with or work for them like that. That's what I kind of started with a local sponsorship to actually get my first money. So like when I first got my first little bit of money, it wasn't really in the fishing industry. It was kind of like my local bank, stuff like that I got on my feet a little bit with them. And it helped me to be able to make those, even getting like a camera deal this year. I was able to afford that. They helped me post, helped me everything. Like I'm not the best speller, all that type of stuff. So they helped me with that. Just stuff like that. It's simple stuff. They helped me create content. So I was able to get on my feet for those people that locally, and I can never be thankful enough for them for what they've done for me. So I feel like that's what I had. Is I started with them to get me on my feet, and I kept trying to grow my brand as a whole, talking to people, making contacts. Relationships are a lot in this industry right now. There's a lot of companies going private equity, all this stuff, but it's still a lot of, making contacts, making relationships with people, and then focusing on yourself to kind of grow your brand, focus on fishing, stuff like that. But it is a thing in social media is you have to know what you can do for them to benefit them. And that when they see results, that's when they want to help you more. If like you said, if you're a liability, when they do pay you a bunch, I feel like it's a lot of stress. But when you grow that relationship, I feel like it's a lot smoother. It does a lot better. It might be longer, but that's just what kind of been with me is I've just slowly tried to grow with the people I've always been with.
All right, let's circle back. I'm going to go back to when you said I like for my jersey to be my brand. I want to wear that
Yep.
same jersey every year. I don't want this sponsor this year and tell you that that's the best, and then the next year I have another sponsor in that same category, and I'm going to tell you they're the best. Let me tell you,
Yep.
I had a mentor, Tom Mann. When I was a kid, I always looked up to Tom Mann. He's a Hall of Famer. He's a hero and just an awesome pioneer to the sport. And so I was with Tom one day, and I was really hot in 1976, 77, 78. I had won so many things. I'd won Angler of the Year 2 years in a row, and I had a lot of things going on. I had a lot of companies that I had opportunities with. And Tom Mann told me one day, he said, let me tell you something, Hank Parker. It doesn't matter if you win every bass tournament in the world. If you don't have credibility to help me sell a man's jelly worm, I don't need you. If you can't help me sell a hummingbird depth finder, I don't need you. You've got to be a credible person. You've got to be honest. You've got to have integrity, and you've got to be sincere. And if you're not, you're going to fall by the wayside because you have no value to me at all. And now here he's a friend of mine and a mentor, and I'm listening. And that never left me. I remember that always. Forrest Wood with Ranger Boats. Forrest told me one day, he said, Hank, you're going to have a lot of opportunities. And there's a lot of boat companies out there, and there's a lot of people that would like to have you join forces with them. But just remember who was with you when you were on the bottom, who helped you build. I've been with Ranger for 50 years. And if it wasn't for Forrest Wood and Tom Bedell over at Berkeley and Tom Mann, there would have been no Hank Parker. Those guys supported me when I was nothing, when I needed that to feed my children, to pay my bank notes. They joined forces with me. I'm a part of their company. I bleed Ranger Boats. I bleed Mercury Outboards. I'm Humminbird. I've been with them my whole career. And except for Humminbird, I had a little glitch. And I will tell you this, you can be as loyal as you want to, but the companies have to be loyal to you as well. I've lost two major sponsors that broke my heart. One was Abu Garcia. I'd been with them. I helped them develop the Revo. I worked with Tom Ricks from the beginning to help build the Revo. I was a big part of all of that. But they decided to go in a different direction for marketing. I couldn't argue with that, and they may be right, but nevertheless, there's nothing I could do about that. And when I went to lose, I had worked for Abu Garcia for 35 years. So what kind of value? But Lynn Reeves over at Luz, he said, we still believe in you. We know you had nothing to do with the departure. So they welcomed me with open arms. It's turned out to be a wonderful relationship. I love the product. I have a lot of input. I get to talk with their engineers on research and development. All that is so important to me. But it takes two to play that game. And you engage, you stay loyal. If somebody offers you $1 more, you don't take it. You believe in the company you work with. If you're with St. Croix, do you work with Jesse Simpkins?
I do. Jesse's I love Jesse.
I love Jesse. I worked with him at Plano for 35 years. Jesse's an awesome guy. But stay faithful. When a person supports you, stay faithful. Don't look at opportunities. Grow within that sport. And then it's up to your companies to realize your value and pay you what you're worth. I can't tell you how many times I got a pay raise that I never asked for, because they knew that my value was greater than what I was charging. So they voluntarily increased me when I didn't even ask for it. So it's their responsibility to be fair. It's your responsibility to be fair. And when you align yourself with those kind of companies, it's a great future. Now, also, I'm picking back up. I'm going back to some of the things you said. Another thing you said is the pressure of people expecting you to do well. The pressure that you're under to pay these bills. I'm going to disappoint you with this. That pressure gets worse because it's no longer the people that expect you to do well. It's you expecting you to do well. You're going to be your own worst. It never went away with me. I kept thinking in my mind, boy, when I get out from under this banknote, I'm not going to be under as much pressure. Oh, I was under more pressure through myself, my expectations of myself. And another thing about going out and making a check, I never thought about that. Every single tournament I went to win. I didn't worry about calculating, well, if I go over here, I might make a check, but if I go over here, I'm probably going to strike out. But if I don't, I'm going to catch a big enough bag to win. Then never did I think at the beginning of a tournament. Now, on the last day, when I was in 49th place, yes, I'm trying to make a check. But when that tournament started, my whole strategies were to win that tournament. The only reason I was there is to win. And I
100%.
never changed that. I didn't compromise that. So if I'm calculating, well, there's a big enough bag over here to win the tournament, but they're going to be a lot harder to catch. I got to deal with maybe some 3 and 4 foot waves. The wind's coming in. I got all this stuff. I never thought about that. I throw caution to the wind. I'm going, man. If there's a chance for me to win that tournament, I'm gone. And so that's the way I thought. And that's the way I fished. I fished to win. I didn't come here to make a check. I came here to leave with that number 1 trophy. And I didn't do it very often, but occasionally I did, you know, and it's so rewarding. But I never went to a tournament that I went there to do good.
Absolutely. And that's like right now is like the part of it, some people, I guess, look at it as being cocky, but to me, it's like when I go to a tournament, and maybe I finish, really well, have a really good tournament, 6th or 7th, but I made a few decisions that I felt like I should have changed and everything else like that. And that's like, I make that pressure and I make myself realize like, hey, even if I did lose 1 or 2 fish that might not have, I could have had more weight, maybe if I did change this, I'm always trying to learn from, even if you did do good, there's always something I feel like I could have done better. And that's like, I am hard on myself a lot of times because I'm trying to learn so fast, make up that gap of, not knowing or not having enough time on the water, is every day I'm out on the water, even if I did do good in the tournament or anything else like that, I'm always looking at like, okay, what did this guy do to finish ahead of me? What was his strategy? What was this? And so every time I go out fishing in one of these tournaments, it's kind of like after the tournament, I kind of go back and analyze like, okay, if I practice here at this body of water, what if I spent 1 day of practice in this other creek that on that last day, instead of running out of fish, I would have had a new area to fish. So like any stuff like that, I try to like realize like, okay, my strategy was good. I made it to the top 10, but I didn't have enough gas left in the tank to produce on that last day. And that's what I really try to like analyze is like, okay, so if I done great, everything else like that, what can I change so I still have a little gas left in the tank for that last day? And it is all strategy. I never fished a 4-day tournament in my life. I've never even thought about it. I think about 1 day at a time usually. So when I thought about catching 4 days of fish, it was like, oh my goodness, like I caught 4 or 5 in this one spot. Do I leave? What do I do? Do I keep fishing? Do I keep catching them? Like, so there's a lot more you have to think about. And usually when I tried, the first couple of days, I do catch them pretty good. And then that evening I start looking at the future. Like, okay, so I got a good bag. So I can make it to day 3 on the bag I got now. But if I do keep catching them, I got nothing for day 4 if I do have that chance to make it. So then at that point, I'm like, do I risk making it maybe a top 20 on catching these fish I'm right here that I can catch now? Or do I go somewhere else, try to make that top 10 and have that spot or the spot I find for day 4? So that's how, no matter how good I do in a tournament, I'm always analyzing what I can do better next time or what I can change to maybe make the outcome a little different. Or maybe losing a fish. Sometimes I get so excited with it when I hook a fish. I'm like, oh my gosh. And I start like going all over the boat, And sometimes it's better for me just to calm down, be all, it's fine, Trey. This fish is everything, but let's just calm down, get him in the boat. Some stuff like that. I do have like a little moment where I lose it. Like I'm, trying to get this fish in the boat because I know this fish is everything. But it's just trying to, every time I fish a tournament, even if I do good, I analyze what I think I could have done a little better. And I feel like that's a big reason that it's helped me. Even though it's hard on yourself, you feel like you're beating yourself up. But I feel like for me, maybe not everybody, it works for everybody, but for me, it helps me realize, like, because usually after a tournament, I'm like, over it, done, passed, like, who cares, you know? But because usually it's stressful, you know, I haven't slept much, I haven't ate much, I'm ready just to get rested back up for the next one. But a lot of times, just to sit down and think about it for a little bit helps me so much when I on my mindset of going into that next tournament, which I think has been a huge player for me.
Yeah, I like that. In 1988, I outsmarted myself at the Bassmaster Classic on the James River in Richmond, and I caught 4 pretty good fish that first day in one spot, and I'm realizing, man, I gotta save these fish. Well, I left those fish only for another angler to come in there and catch a big bag, you know. And now he feels like that's his spot, and it turned into a lot of. But I blew it. I absolutely blew it. And so I go back in 1989 and I end up winning the Classic, and I didn't save anything. I went all out every day with everything I could do. And I learned to adjust within that body of water. And then I look at my career and I said, you know, the vast majority of tournaments that I won are tournaments where I left the blast off and I got to my fishing area and I put the trolling motor down and I picked that troll motor up on the way in. I stayed in that one general area all day long. And that is when I was the most successful. But
absolutely,
I don't want to limit myself to that, because then I won later on in life. I won 2 other tournaments on running and gunning, you know. And so you look at the most successful tournament angler ever, Kevin Van Dam. He's a runner and gunner, man. He fishes like his hair's on fire everywhere he goes. And it's different strategies, but I think it's important that you find your strength and you build on that. I find my strength and I build on that, but I don't want to limit myself to whatever that is. If I'm a spinnerbait fisherman, if I'm a shallow water fisherman, if I'm a power fisherman, I want to play on that, but I don't want to limit myself to that. If I need to use a finesse technique, or if I need to be looking at fish and put a little minnow on a jig head, I don't want to be limited. People say, well, would you say you're a spinnerbait fisherman? No, I am not a spinnerbait fisherman. Would you say you're a crank? No, I am not. Would you say you're a finesse? No, I'm none of that. I'm all of that. And so I don't like to be limited to a certain method or technique. I tell people fishing lures are like tools, you know, and that's all they are. They're a tool to catch a fish. So you pick out the best tool for the situation, you know. And a guy's working on an automobile, he don't care if he's using a 3/8 inch socket or a 7/8. It makes no difference to him. He's just using the tool to get the job done. And that's the way I like to look at fishing. And obviously, now I want to talk about this. You grew up in Kentucky, right?
Illinois.
Illinois. All right. You grew up in Illinois. You fished a lot of rivers and lakes around Illinois. Did you fish Wren Lake any?
Oh, yeah. That's actually a lot of the BFLs that I done really well in. It was at Wren Lake. Flipping laydowns, you know, it's a lot of that stuff.
Well, I'm going to tell you a little story about Wren Lake. Bill Harkins, that's where the lunker lure came from. And now there's a lot of controversy over forward-facing sonar. But when the lunker lure first arrived, Guy Aker, a friend of mine who fishes tournaments, Guy went up there and met Bill Harkins. He came back with a couple of lunker lures, and I ended up, he gave me a couple. I was worried that the lunker lure was going to catch every bass in the lake. They need to outlaw the lunker lure. I mean, you go to a farm pond, and I believe you catch it was unbelievable. But as time went on, you go back after 3 years and you can't get a bite on it. So things change. And so forward-facing sonar, things are going to change. I'm already seeing a lot of change, and fish are more difficult to catch. They're more aware you're there. And so things are changing, and they have a way of regulating themselves. But I say all of that. That was my history with Wren Lake. That's where the lunker lure was developed, and that's where Bill Harkins from up there in Illinois. So you fished all these lakes in Illinois. Now, all of a sudden, you're going to the St. Lawrence Seaway. Is any of those bodies of water? I mean, golly, bum, you got Lake Ontario. You can go forever and not see land. You found yourself being intimidated at all?
Well, absolutely. So when I went to St. Lawrence last year, not last year, but in the opens, I didn't do very good at all. I didn't even have a limit of smallmouth at like 1 o'clock. Like everybody's, and that's bad. Like that's like you talk to everybody, like they just jump in the boat there, and I'm out there just struggling. I'm talking dragging my jig, throwing a Ned rig, which I hardly ever do. Like I'm talking struggling. And after that tournament, I was like, what did I do wrong? Like, holy cow. Like, all these guys catching 20 pounds. And this year, I went into it, I'm like, I'm not staying around the ramp this year. I'm driving till I feel like it looks good. Like, I don't care how far it is. It's an hour, hour and a quarter, however. And I finally, I set my eyes on a place on practice this year. And the first day, because in pre-practice I idled so much, just idled, till I find it enough cover where maybe if I wasn't on the fish, I had enough cover I could run to catch fish type of scenario. So I was like, okay, so if I don't find them, at least I have enough stuff I can run overall in this area. And in the first day of practice, I ran like half the day, didn't see any fish on nothing. I was like, wow, this is productive, like this is awesome. And we only had 2 days of practice because we got canceled at Champlain. And from then on, I was like, okay, so then my trolling motor broke. And like, this is on a fishery that you can run an hour and a half. And we only had 2 days of practice. And then I lost a half a day of it. And I had to go get my trolling motor fixed. And I come back and I had that one day. And I just started running stuff. And I was running all the history that I had idled and everything. And all of a sudden, I'm like, Trey, this ain't working. Like, you got to do something. So I just ran back towards the ramp and just started hitting stuff. Just whatever. It didn't matter if it was 70 foot, 20 foot. I was going to find them somewhere. And I stomped on a hump, and I thought I seen one. And I hadn't caught a fish yet. Like, all day, I hadn't caught a fish yet. And I was like, looking, I pitched it down there 50 foot. And I let it go. I never caught a bass in 50 foot of water. I was like, they don't even live that deep. I was like, walleye or something. Let it go down. I feel it, thong. And I set the hook. 5-pounder. I'm like, oh my goodness. And I see 10 or 12 come up with it. I'm like, okay, I got one spot. I got one. And I kept running, and I looked on my map. I sat there for 5 minutes, and I looked at everything that looked around that. And then every hump and every point or nook I thought looked good. From then on, for about 3 hours, I ran in those certain it was set up the same way as most of them had fish. And I was like, okay, now this is turned around. I was like, now we got to figure out, is it going to last? Like, what else? So then I went on and trying to find something else. And I always felt back to that pattern. I found a whole lot of spots this year. And by the tournament come around, I ran that same stuff, and I almost broke, the century mark in 4 days. I had like 98 pounds of smallmouth, and I had the opportunities to have a century belt of smallmouth. And I didn't know nothing before, and figuring it out that quick was – everybody asked me, like, what was your biggest accomplishment this year? And I feel like it was at St. Lawrence. Even though, we did win Fork, and great, everything, that was the most amazing tournament I've ever fished, but a true accomplishment to myself that I learned in such a quick way and figured out in such a quick way, the St. Lawrence by far. That was the most, feel like just sitting down, being in tune with it, not worrying about nothing else, and just worrying about trying to figure out how to catch bass. And that tournament was by far one of them tournaments that it clicked. Like, you don't get that all the time, and when it clicks, it's a feeling like no other. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but it's such a good feeling when something clicks, or a pattern clicks, or to run laydowns at a mouth of a creek at a river with a certain current seam on it. Anything like that, when it clicks, and it's the best feeling ever. And that was one tournament, or my first tournament I've ever had click like that, where I could go, and in the little bit of time I had, we recovered and made it work, and it was awesome. And I learned, and that's a crazy thing, every day through the tournament, when I started the tournament, I had so much negativity, like, of myself as smallmouth, because I never done good in smallmouth. I was like, it doesn't matter what I'm on. Something's going to happen. They'll either move or something. And I caught like 23.5 pounds, and I'm like, oh, like, this is good. Like, I shouldn't even, I'm done. Like, this is all, I'm just going to go, fish around. This is the biggest bag I've ever caught. And then the next day I went out and I caught almost 26 pounds. I was like, wait a minute, did I screw up? And then the next day I caught 24 something. And even like every day I started to learn more and more throughout the tournament of what I could do to get them to bite, or how I got them to, because at the river you can't see them on forward facing. Most of the time you can't see them. So when I would pan around, I would find out what they wanted to sit behind. Even though you can't see them, I was like, he's going to be there. And I'd throw out there and I'd let it float over, and here he'd come. I'm like, yeah. And I'd shake it, and I'd catch him. So just stuff like that is I learned so much in those 3 or 4 days that it's going to benefit me a lot more in the future now that I understand and truly have the confidence that I can compete with smallmouth now. It was huge. That was my biggest accomplishment this year.
That's incredible, and I've been where you are, and I want to kind of build the stage for people that are listening or watching the podcast. You haven't caught a fish, man, and you're working so hard, and you're looking, and you're trying to figure out. And first of all, the current is just ripping in the river.
Yep.
You've got Lake Ontario, which it can take your life. I mean, you can have 8-footers roll in there, and so you got all these things that are rolling through your mind. And so you're up there practicing and working, and you're doing your thing. And you ain't caught a fish, man. You ain't got a bite. And all of a sudden, you get on a little hump, and you think, man, and throw out there in 50 foot of water, and you catch a smallmouth, and here comes 8 or 9 following him up. And you put that together, and then you looked at this spot, and you said, okay, here's another spot like that, and another spot, and you built that whole puzzle. You put one little end piece together on that puzzle, and then you assemble that whole 300-piece puzzle by looking at this spot compared to that spot, approach it the same way, set your boat up, throw out there in 50 foot of water, and catch nearly 100 pounds of smallmouth. That is just incredible. And the confidence that gives you. And you talk about being overwhelmed. In 1979, I grew up in South Carolina and North Carolina, and I fished shallow water lake. In 1979, we went to Lake Powell. Now, in 1979, I had been so incredibly successful my whole tournament career, and I had a lot of confidence in myself. I believed I didn't care if it was a mud hole on the side of the road. In my own mind, now I didn't tell the world this, but in my mind, I believed I could catch a fish. If there's one in there, I can catch it. So I get to Lake Powell, and I've got all this confidence. Man, I've got confidence. And so I get out on Lake Powell, and it's 700. You could actually put your hand on a canyon wall, and you're 700 feet deep. I had no clue on the face of this earth what to do. And I practiced, and I flew the lake in an airplane. I chartered an airplane the day before practice. And so I knew a lot about it just from what I'd seen from the air, and I'd marked maps. I found one rock in the back of a canyon that had some fish on it. That is all I had. I had nothing else. And the first day of that tournament, I drew a guy named Don Seifer from California, and he fishing the Bobby Garland spider jig. I'd never seen one before, but he was very gracious. He gave me a couple. But we went to my rock, and he caught a limit off of that rock, and I caught 2. And I'm done. I know nothing else. And so we started fishing, and Don started giving me some ideas, and I ended up catching a small limit. Don had a pretty good bag, but I really didn't know what to do. The area where we had caught the fish, that was his area. So I had that one rock, and we exhausted it the first 30 minutes. And so I don't know what to do. But I go in these canyon, and I'm sitting there, and I'm looking, and there's big rock slides. You can see where these rock slides, and I was thinking in my mind, boy, you wouldn't want to be fishing that wall when that happened, or they'd kill you, you know. And then it dawned on me, you know, all those rocks that fell off that mountain, they're in this water. That's got to be some awesome structure. And so I ended up just going in these canyons, and I'd find rock slides, and I'd throw that spider jig up there against that bluff wall and let it fall till I hit the rock. I caught the big fish in that tournament, and I know he was at least 70 foot deep. I'd never caught a fish that deep in my life. I never even dreamed a bass would go that deep. But to make a long story short, I was completely overwhelmed. I fished 3 days of practice and put nothing together except one rock pile. And I ended up finished 9th in that tournament, caught the big fish, and came away feeling pretty good about myself for figuring out those rock slides.
Yep.
And that's the kind of thing I look back on my career, and those, you'll look back 25, 30, 40, 50 years from now, and you'll think, you know, it was a defining moment in my life and my career as a fisherman, is figuring out how to catch those fish on my own. Nobody marked it. Nobody gave me an idea. I'm frustrated. I've lost most of my confidence. I'm overwhelmed on the St. Lawrence River, all these ships going through, all this current, all this big lake. And I figured out on my own at 19 years old or 18?
19.
At 19 years old, I figured out how to catch these fish and where they were. And I put that together and I caught almost 100 pounds of smallmouth in that competition. You'll never forget that. And that will play a big role in your confidence. And I'm going to tell you, the vast majority of tournament fishing is in your brain, in your own mind. Do you have confidence in yourself? I'm not talking about arrogance. I'm not talking about being cocky. I'm talking about trusting your own instincts, trusting your own abilities. Do you feel confident in who you are, the way you discern water, and the way you put it together? And when you do what you did on the St. Lawrence Seaway, that just broadens that and ensures that you will have that self-confidence to be competitive. And it's amazing how my career changed once I gained that confidence. And Lake Powell was a big part of that. There I went in there with all the confidence in the world, and I had every bit of it sucked out of me by the end of the practice. Yep. And then I rebuilt it during that event. And go back to Mike Iaconelli, never give up, never give up. You know, I love that. Never give up, man. Just keep digging, keep putting those pieces together. And it only took one fish. Had you not got a bite on that island, on that hump, had you not got a bite, it would have changed everything.
Yep.
But because
one fish.
Yep, one fish. Because you stayed consistent and persistent, you caught that one fish, you were able to get the end piece of that puzzle put together, and you assembled the rest of it on your own. That is pretty awesome.
Like I said, I guess that's why we do it. You know, that's the drive that pushes us every day, you know, is figuring out that puzzle. And that's what I love. That's what we all share, is the challenge of putting the puzzle together. You know, it's like no matter how it feels and anything else, just putting it together is the whole reason I feel like a lot of us do it. You know, like it's not for, you know, the money, nothing like that. For me, it's the challenge in myself to go out there on a new body of water and figure it out. You know, it's just like hunting. It's just like deer hunting. It's just like anything else in the outdoors, is figuring out what they do. You know, it's like figuring out a deer. Like, okay, in the morning he goes out, checks this scrape, that scrape. It's the same thing. You know, everything has its pattern, and to figure it out and harvest it or catch them that's the whole deal of it. I just love figuring it out. You know, it's like it is killing the deer, but it's some more of the puzzle that I love of figuring it out, figuring him out. You know, figuring out how Mother Nature works I love it.
Well, I like your enthusiasm, and to be young is awesome. You know, I used to be 20 years old. I know you won't believe that, but I used to be 20 years old. That enthusiasm and that innocence of not knowing everything and discovering on your own and putting that together, that defines your character. That defines your ability as an angler. And to have the work ethic that you have and the energy you have, and then developing that self-confidence, you're going to be a force that these guys are going to have to deal with for a long time. I'm glad I'm not fishing against you. I'm gone. I'm retired. You're not going to affect my career at this stage of the game, and I'm glad. But I remember feeling how you feel, and I remember being in the position. When I won the Classic the first time, I was the youngest guy at that time to ever win the Classic. I was 26 years old. And then Stanley Mitchell came back and won it when he was 21 years old, 3 years later. But it's amazing what that youthful energy and enthusiasm and how prosperous you can become. And you're building the foundation to have an incredible career. It's amazing how far you've come and how knowledgeable you are. It's just a kid, man. You're still a kid. And to be doing as well as you are, runner-up in Angler of the Year, could have won it had you not been late. I mean, you look at all the things you got going on, and it's fascinating. I love watching you. I've been Harold Knight. You and Harold are good buddies, and he's a good friend of mine. Let me tell you, Harold could have been a professional fisherman. He's got all the ability. And when Harold Knight said, "You need to meet Trey," that boy's a stick. Hank, he's no fluke. I'm telling you, that kid is the real deal. He's unbelievable. He said he impresses the fire out of me. So when Harold told me that, then I knew it was the real deal, because Harold don't brag on everybody. I'll just tell you that. And Harold Knight bragged on you. And when Harold Knight brags on you, it's real. So I knew you was awesome. And so when I just start watching you, it's amazing how well you've done. And it wouldn't matter. A lot of people say there are people out there, and I don't know this. I'm just going to go by hearsay, and I'm going to let it be what it is. And I don't mean any offense to anyone. But there are a lot of people say, well, these kids out there, they playing video games with forward-facing sonar. That's all they know how to do. I think you could take your forward-facing sonar off your boat. I think you could do whatever, and you're going to catch them, because you got the drive, you got the discipline, and you're building as you go. You're building more and more and more knowledge, because you're exposed to, I mean, be honest, you can't duplicate St. Lawrence Seaway in Illinois, no more than I could in South Carolina. Yeah. I mean, I could take 10 lakes and not have 700 foot of water. You know, I can stack them on top of each other. So you learn as you go, and there's a process that you can't eliminate. And like you said earlier, there's variables that you can't control, and then there are variables you can control. But when you're self-confident, when you have a work a work ethic that you're willing to do whatever it takes. I don't care if it's raining, snowing, wind blowing, it don't matter. I'm going to go. I'm going to put my boat in at daylight, and I'm going to fish to dark and practice. I'm going to do everything I can. When you got that attitude, man, there's no limits to where you're going to go. I can tell you that.
Yes, sir. Well, I thank you, buddy. That's like, I plan to always have it, plan to always, and not get lazy. Like, like you do good, something like that. I'm like, nope, we getting up early, or trying to get up early, like I might sleep in here and there. And it is, I love it. It's always, and that's the one thing, like right now and this year is like, for me that's what this off season is for me. It's to get that fire back, like you fish all summer, all deal, everything like this. For me, I love to have that feeling. Like when I touch a rod in the spring, I'm like, like this is it, like I'm waiting on that one bite. So that's an important thing on this off season, to do hunting, visit with the friends, because you're gone so much. Like I've never been gone that much this year, and get that fire back. I fish off and on through the off season, and just kind of keep myself ready. But when it's that first trip of the spring, and like usually it's like January, usually when my first trip is, and right when I get in there, January, February, it builds that fire back, and I'm ready. Like I have that off season, don't think about it much, and then right when I get on that water, I'm like, oh my! I see the first one, or I catch the first one, I'm like, this is what it's about, and it starts all over again. So that's my main thing is I hope, I never get burnt out, and I just keep going. I still have that drive throughout my whole career.
I don't believe you'll ever get burned out. I went fishing yesterday. It was a 25-mile-an-hour wind. We had 3-foot waves out on the lake, and I was excited about being there. At 71 years old, I was as pumped up as it was my first fishing trip, man. I was so excited, and I went out and fished in all that wind and rough weather, and my cameraman said, don't you think we could go over on the other side and it'd be a lot more comfortable? I said, I didn't come out here to be comfortable. I came out here to catch fish. I need to be fishing these wind-blown points. And so, but I love it, and here I am, an old man, and look at Dance. Dance, he's so excited. I called Bill Jr. about 2 months ago. It's in the middle of summertime. It was a 98-degree day in Memphis. And I said, hey, buddy, where's your dad? He said, he's out there on the lake. I said, what's the temperature in Memphis? Is it cooler there than it is here? He said, oh, no, it's going to get up to 100 today.
God,
I said, well, have your dad call me when he gets in. He said, he won't be in till dark. I said, well, when did he go? He said, oh, he was out there at daylight. So here he is, 84 years old. It's 100 degrees, and he fishing from daylight to dark. And I said, well, who's he fishing with? He said, oh, he's by himself. He's out there just fishing. He loves it. I want to be like Bill Dance. I think that's awesome, man.
Absolutely. It is. It's an awesome thing. I'm glad, like that's kind of like, every morning I pray about it, just kind of like going on and letting him kind of provide me a route. Like sometimes we don't understand why certain doors close. They might look like the best opportunity in life, and all of a sudden it's just, it wasn't meant to be, even though it felt so great at the time. And that's one thing, just having peace with it this year. Certain stuff happened, anything else like that. But when I pray about it and realize like he has a path for me, and I just got to wait for it, be patient, and let everything just kind of go go with the flow, and just let it, I guess, develop.
Well, we talked about a lot of strategies, and we talked a lot of things, but right there, what you just said is complete wisdom. When you put it in his hands and you realize he has a purpose and he cares about you more than you care about yourself, and what you think is wonderful falls apart, hang on, because there's something better coming. And I've lived that. I told you I used to be 20. Well, 51 years ago, I was. And I can tell you a lot of incidents in my life, exactly what you just said. I thought, Lord, how could this happen? My whole life is ruined. I'm going to go broke, or whatever it is, that was the big trouble that I was having, only to turn out to be something better that was on the other side. And I didn't see it. I was praying that he would fix the mess I was in. And he let that go and brought me something much, much better. And I've lived
Yes,
that,
sir.
and I see it. I still struggle, but to hold on to his promise and believe that is the strongest character you can have, and to trust in him and to realize he is in control and make him number one in your life, then you're bound for success, regardless of what you put on the scales, by the way.
Thank you, buddy.
Yeah, regardless. Yeah, that's a big deal. I'm glad we had the opportunity to talk together, and I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. I want to say, I talked about Bill Dance earlier. Bill Dance and Jimmy Houston and I are in a contest with Mercury Outboards to get people to sign up under our name. And the deal is you can win a Mercury outboard up to 300 horsepower. But if you sign up under Bill and he has the most votes when we get to the Bassmaster Classic, I'm going to have to stand up and let Bill throw a pie in my face.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
They better get busy
or
doing the right vote, right?
Yeah, so you got to vote to win that outboard under Hank Parker. So not under Jimmy Houston. Can you imagine an 80-year-old man with bangs hit you in the face with a pie?
With a pie.
Oh, that ain't going to be good. So I got to get everybody to sign up. We're going to put a link at the end of our little podcast here. I'm going to put a link up where you can sign up under Hank Parker, not Bill Dance or Jimmy Houston.
They never let you live that down.
Oh, it would be awful. It would be so embarrassing. I get a pie in my face and hear Jimmy Houston up there. That's going to be tough. That's going to be tough. So if you know anybody that would like to have a Mercury outboard, tell them go to my Facebook page and vote for Hank Parker. That's a big
Sounds
deal.
Good, buddy.
Register to win under the name Hank Parker. That's a big deal. Man, I'm going to keep following your career. Anything I can ever do to help you, you let me know. And I'm here for you, and I can help you any way. Holler at me, man. I want to go fishing with you one day and let you teach
100%.
me. Yeah, that would be so
100%.
awesome.
We need to go somewhere, catch some big ones.
Man, that would be exciting. I love it. We might even bring old Harold Knight with us and let him sit back and be the net man.
Yeah, we got to have him as a net man, for sure. He'd be like, oh, son, you better get him in the boat.
Hey, he's a terrible net man, but that's a story for another day. I'll tell you all about that. But, hey, it's been so great to have you, man. I sure do appreciate it. And we're going to be following your career and wish you the best. And you keep trusting in him, and it's all going to work out, brother.
Sounds good. Thanks, buddy. Thanks for having me on.
I sure do appreciate it, man. And I'd like to thank you guys for watching. God bless you. I'm Hank Parker, and I'll see you next time.